My name is Jane, and for most of my life, I was a devout Muslim woman living in a quiet suburb. Every day followed a familiar rhythm centered around my faith and family. I'd wake before dawn for Fajr prayer, then prepare breakfast for my husband Ahmed and our 3 children. After getting the kids off to school, I'd spend my mornings volunteering at the local mosque or studying the Quran. Afternoons were filled with household chores and preparing for evening prayers. I'd greet the children as they returned from school, help with homework, and then we'd all gather for Maghrib prayer at sunset. It was a life of routine and devotion, one I thought would continue unchanged until my last breath. But on that fateful day, everything changed in an instant. It started like any other Tuesday. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner while my 2 youngest children played in the living room. Suddenly, I felt dizzy. The room began to spin, and I gripped the counter to steady myself. I remember thinking I must be coming down with something, but then I heard a thud from the other room. My heart raced as I stumbled toward the living room, calling out to my children. I found them on the floor, unconscious. The realization hit me like a wave. Something was terribly wrong. I tried to reach for my phone, but my legs gave out. As I collapsed to the ground, my last conscious thought was a desperate prayer for my children's safety. I later learned that our carbon monoxide detector had malfunctioned, allowing the odorless gas to silently fill our home. Our neighbor, concerned when she saw the children's backpacks still on the porch hours after school, called the police. When the paramedics arrived, they found us all unconscious. They rushed us to the hospital, but for me, it was already too late. In the ambulance, my heart stopped beating. For 4 minutes and 37 seconds, I was clinically dead. The paramedics worked tirelessly, refusing to give up on me. They shocked my heart, performed CPR, and administered medication, but during those long minutes, I was somewhere else entirely. As everything faded to black around me, I had no idea my entire world was about to change. The life I had known, the beliefs I had held so dear, were about to be shaken to their very core. What I experienced in those moments between life and death would alter the course of my existence forever. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you die, but that's not what I experienced at all. Instead, I found myself in a place where time and space held no meaning, face to face with a being that would shatter my understanding of existence itself. One moment I was collapsing in my kitchen, and the next, I was floating in an endless void. The darkness was absolute, deeper than anything I'd ever known. Yet strangely, I felt calm. I wasn't scared or confused. It was as if a part of me had always known this place existed. I looked down and saw my body lying on a stretcher, paramedics working frantically to revive me. Their movements seemed slow, almost dreamlike. I wanted to tell them I was okay, that they didn't need to worry, but I couldn't make a sound. I was completely detached from my physical form, observing everything from a distance. As I watched the scene below, I became aware of something else. A pinprick of light appeared in the distance, barely visible at first, but as I focused on it, it grew brighter and larger. It pulsed with a warm, inviting energy that called out to me without words. I felt an overwhelming urge to move towards it, to let it envelop me completely, but as I tried to approach the light, something held me back. It wasn't fear or reluctance on my part, it was more like an invisible force, gently but firmly keeping me in place. I realized then that my journey wasn't over. There was more for me to see, to understand. That's when I noticed a figure emerging from the shadows. It was difficult to describe. Not quite human, but not entirely alien either. It radiated a soft, comforting glow that somehow made the darkness around us feel less oppressive. I knew instinctively that this was an angel, a guide sent to help me navigate this strange new realm. The angel didn't speak, at least not in any way I was used to. Instead, I felt waves of understanding washing over me. Without words, it conveyed its purpose. To show me truths I had never known, to help me see beyond the limits of my earthly existence. I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. What would I learn? How would it change me? As the angel reached out, I knew my journey was just beginning. The life I had known, the beliefs I had held so dear, were about to be challenged in ways I couldn't imagine, but I was ready. Something deep within my soul told me that this experience, as overwhelming as it was, would lead me to a greater understanding of life, death, and the nature of reality itself. And have you ever wondered what it would be like to see your entire life through the eyes of everyone you've ever met? As the angel guided me through my past, I realized that's exactly what was happening. Every interaction, every word spoken, every silent judgment, I felt it all. And let me tell you, it was nothing like I expected. The angel's touch transported me back through time, but this wasn't just a passive replay of events. I found myself experiencing not just my actions, but their ripple effects on others, effects I'd been completely blind to in life. I saw moments of kindness like the time I comforted my younger brother after a nightmare. I felt the warmth and security that flooded through him, and how that small act of love shaped his trust in me for years to come. But I also saw my mistakes, laid bare in all their painful detail. I relived moments of impatience with my children, feeling their hurt and confusion as if it were my own. I watched myself snap at a coworker and saw how my harsh words affected her confidence for weeks afterward. Each scene was so vivid, so real, that I couldn't hide from the truth of my actions. As the review continued, I began to understand something profound about my faith. All my life, I'd prided myself on following the rules of Islam to the letter. I never missed a prayer, always gave to charity, and fasted faithfully during Ramadan. But now, I saw how often my devotion had been more about checking boxes than truly connecting with God or serving others. I watched myself turn away a neighbor in need because I was too busy preparing for evening prayers. I saw how my rigid adherence to dietary laws sometimes made others feel judged or unwelcome in my home. These moments hit me hard, forcing me to confront the gap between my intentions and my impact. But the life review wasn't all about regret. I also saw countless small kindnesses I'd forgotten, a smile that brightened a stranger's day, a listening ear that helped a friend through a tough time. I realized that even our smallest actions can have far-reaching consequences, for good or ill. As the scenes of my life flowed by, I felt a deep sense of humility wash over me. I saw myself as I truly was, not the perfect Muslim I'd tried so hard to be, but a flawed, complex human being capable of both great love and hurtful mistakes. I understood that true faith isn't about following rules perfectly, but about cultivating a genuine connection with God and showing His love to others. When the life review finally ended, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The weight of what I'd seen and felt pressed upon me, but alongside it was a new sense of purpose. I had been given a precious gift, the chance to truly understand the impact of my choices. Now, it was up to me to use that knowledge wisely. The life review had shaken me to my core, but it was only a prelude to what came next. As my vision cleared, I saw countless souls stretching out before me, each moving towards one of two unimaginable fates. What I witnessed in those moments would forever change how I understood the consequences of our earthly lives. I stood beside the angel, watching in awe as an endless stream of souls flowed past us. Some were drawn towards a radiant light that seemed to pulse with warmth and love. It was brighter than anything I'd ever seen, yet it didn't hurt to look at. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and joy emanating from it, and I knew without being told that this was heaven. But not all souls were moving towards the light. To my horror, I saw many drifting towards a shadowy void that seemed to swallow all hope and warmth. The darkness was more than just an absence of light. It felt like a living thing, cold and empty beyond description. I instinctively knew this was hell, and the sight of it filled me with a deep, aching sadness. As I watched, the angel communicated to me without words. I understood that these eternal destinations weren't arbitrary. Each soul was drawn to light or darkness based on the choices they'd made in life, the beliefs they'd held, and the authenticity of their hearts. It wasn't about following a set of rules perfectly. It was about the core of who we are and how we treat others. The angel showed me glimpses of what awaited in each realm. Heaven was more beautiful than I could have imagined, a place of perfect harmony where every soul existed in complete unity with God and each other. The love I felt there was overwhelming, pure, and unconditional. Hell, on the other hand, was total separation from God. It wasn't a place of fire and brimstone like I'd always pictured. Instead, it was an emptiness so profound that it defied description. The souls there were utterly alone, cut off from the source of all love and light. As I took in this overwhelming scene, I felt the weight of eternity pressing upon me. I realized that every choice we make, every word we speak, every action we take, it all has consequences that echo into eternity. Our lives aren't just about the here and now, they're about preparing our souls for what comes after. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. How many times had I focused on outward appearances of faith rather than cultivating a genuine relationship with God? How often had I judged others instead of showing them love and compassion? I thought about all the people in my life who didn't know this truth, who were unknowingly drifting towards that terrible emptiness, and just when I thought my journey couldn't get more profound, I found myself face to face with the very essence of love and truth. What I experienced next would redefine my understanding of God in ways I never imagined possible. As I stood there, still reeling from the weight of what I'd witnessed, a presence unlike any other enveloped me. It was warm, comforting, and indescribably powerful all at once. I turned and saw him, Jesus. The moment our eyes met, I felt every misconception I had ever held about him melt away. He wasn't just a prophet or a teacher. He was God himself, the source of all truth and love. The intensity of his gaze was overwhelming. I felt exposed, as if every part of my being was laid bare before him. But instead of judgment, I felt only acceptance and love. It was a love so pure and unconditional that it brought me to my knees. In his presence, there was no room for pride, no need for pretense. I was completely undone yet completely whole at the same time. Jesus didn't speak, at least not with words. Instead, he communicated directly to my heart and soul. He showed me how he had worked through the people and events in my life, gently leading me toward the truth. I saw moments where I had unknowingly felt his guidance, times when his love had touched me through the kindness of others. I realized that even when I didn't recognize him, he had always been there. As these revelations washed over me, I understood why I had missed recognizing Jesus for so long. My preconceptions about God, shaped by years of religious teaching, had created a barrier. I had been so focused on following rules and rituals that I had missed the personal relationship Jesus was offering all along. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about God crumbled away. The rigid boundaries of my faith expanded, revealing a love far greater than I had ever imagined. I knew somehow that I was at the threshold of eternity, and that this encounter would change me forever. As our time together drew to a close, Jesus imparted one final truth. I had been given a mission, and now it was up to me to fulfill it. The weight of this responsibility settled on me, but alongside it came a deep sense of peace. I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I wouldn't face them alone. Have you ever felt torn between two worlds, knowing your choice would change everything? As I stood there, bathed in heaven's light, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. The most important decision of my existence awaited, and I never expected what happened next. The peace and love I felt in heaven were beyond anything I'd ever experienced. It was like being embraced by pure joy, a feeling so complete that I never wanted it to end. Part of me longed to stay to bask in this perfect harmony forever. The thought of returning to earth with all its pain and confusion seemed almost unbearable. But as I stood there, weighing my options, faces began to appear in my mind. I saw my husband, Ahmed, my children, my friends and neighbors. I thought of all the people in my community who, like me, had never truly understood the depth of God's love or the reality of eternity. How could I keep this truth to myself? The angel waited silently beside me, allowing me time to process everything I'd seen and learned. I felt the weight of my newfound knowledge pressing on my heart. This experience, as overwhelming and beautiful as it was, wasn't just for me. It was a message, a truth that needed to be shared. I realized then that my journey wasn't over. Yes, heaven was indescribably wonderful, but I had a purpose to fulfill on earth. People needed to know about God's love, about the choices we make and their eternal consequences. I couldn't stay silent. Making the decision to return wasn't easy. I knew I'd face doubt, skepticism, and maybe even rejection. The comfortable life I'd known before was gone forever. But I also knew I wouldn't be alone. The love I'd experienced in heaven, the truth I'd learned from Jesus, these would be my strength. So, with a mixture of sadness and determination, I made my choice. I would go back. I would share my story, no matter how difficult it might be. As soon as I made the decision, I felt a shift in my surroundings. The angel's presence began to fade, and with it, the overwhelming peace of heaven. With a heavy heart but a sense of purpose, I prepared myself for what lay ahead. The journey back to life wouldn't be easy, but I knew it was necessary. I had been given a second chance, not just for myself, but for everyone who needed to hear this message of hope and truth. They say the truth will set you free, but what happens when no one believes your truth? As I lay there, surrounded by beeping machines and concerned faces, I realized that returning from death was only the first challenge. The real test would be sharing what I'd seen. When I first opened my eyes in that hospital room, everything felt different. The world seemed brighter, more vivid somehow. But as I looked at my family gathered around my bed, their faces etched with worry, I knew they couldn't see the change in me. Not yet. I tried to tell them about my experience, about the darkness, the light, the life review, about Jesus and the profound love I'd felt in his presence. I spoke of heaven and hell, of the choices we make and their eternal consequences. But as I shared, I watched their expression shift from relief to confusion, then to concern. Ahmed, my husband, squeezed my hand gently. "Jane, sweetheart," he said, his voice careful and measured. "You've been through a traumatic experience. The doctors said you might experience some unusual thoughts. It's probably just the oxygen deprivation playing tricks on your mind." I felt a pang in my chest at his words. How could I make him understand that this wasn't a hallucination or a dream? It was more real than anything I'd ever experienced. But when I tried to explain further, Ahmed just shook his head, suggesting I rest. My children were even worse. They avoided my gaze, fidgeting uncomfortably whenever I brought up what had happened. My oldest, Amir, would quickly change the subject, while little Amira would suddenly remember homework she needed to do. Only Lily, my middle child, seemed willing to listen, though I could see the doubt in her eyes. As days passed and I grew stronger, friends came to visit. But when I shared my story with them, their reactions were much the same. Some listened politely before quickly steering the conversation to my recovery. Others were more direct, suggesting I focus on getting better and not dwell on what they saw as fever dreams or medication-induced hallucinations. With each dismissal, each concerned look, I felt more alone. The joy and purpose I'd felt upon deciding to return began to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of isolation. How could I fulfill my mission if no one would listen? How could I share the truth when everyone around me was convinced I was confused, or worse? But even as doubt surrounded me, I clung to the truth of what I'd seen. The memory of Jesus' love, the reality of heaven and hell, the understanding I'd gained about the eternal impact of our choices. These weren't things I could simply forget or dismiss. I knew, deep in my soul, that I couldn't stay silent. No matter how difficult it might be, I had to find a way to share my story. The truth I learned was too important to keep to myself, even if it meant facing rejection and disbelief. Have you ever felt a truth so powerful it threatened to burst out of you? That's how I felt, knowing I had to share my experience. Little did I know, my story would become a catalyst for transformation, not just for strangers, but for those closest to me. At first, I spoke hesitantly, sharing my story with small groups at local churches and community gatherings. The reactions were mixed, to say the least. Some people listened with wide-eyed wonder, hanging on my every word as I described my encounter with Jesus and the glimpses of heaven and hell. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, skepticism etched across their faces. I remember one evening, after speaking at a women's group, when an elderly lady approached me with tears in her eyes. "Your story has given me hope," she whispered, clasping my hands. "I've been so afraid of death, but now I see it differently." Moments like these gave me the courage to keep going, even when faced with doubt and dismissal. Gradually, something began to shift. More people started approaching me after my talks, sharing their own struggles with faith and asking questions about what I'd experienced. It was as if my story had opened a door, allowing others to voice their doubts and fears about the afterlife. The most surprising changes, though, happened right under my own roof. Lily, my middle child, who had always been the most open to my experience, started asking more questions about faith. We'd have long talks late into the night, discussing the nature of God's love and what it means to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Seeing her eyes light up with understanding filled my heart with joy. Even Ahmed, my skeptical husband, began to soften. One evening, I found him sitting quietly in our living room, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I don't understand everything you've told us," he said slowly, "but I can see how it's changed you. There's a peace about you now that I can't explain." From that day on, he started joining us for family prayers, his presence a silent but powerful acknowledgement. Our home transformed into a place of spiritual discussions and support. Friends and neighbors who had once avoided the topic now felt comfortable sharing their own doubts and experiences. We'd gather in the evenings, talking openly about life, death, and the love of God. I watched in amazement as the lives were transformed through these conversations, including my own. With each person touched by my story, I understood why I'd been sent back. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about sharing a message of hope and love, about helping others see beyond the veil of this world to the eternal truths that await us all. And have you ever felt like you're living in two worlds at once? That's my reality now. Every mundane task carries the weight of eternity, and every conversation holds the potential for cosmic significance. Since my near-death experience, I've been navigating a delicate balance between my earthly responsibilities and my newfound spiritual mission. It's like I have one foot in this world and one in the next. Simple things like grocery shopping or paying bills now feel strangely surreal. I find myself pausing in the middle of everyday tasks, struck by the profound realization that there's so much more beyond this physical realm. The reality of heaven and hell is no longer just a concept for me. It's a vivid truth that colors every aspect of my life. When I look at the people around me, I can't help but wonder about their eternal destinies. It's both a blessing and a burden to carry this knowledge. I want to shake everyone I meet and tell them about the love and acceptance I felt in Jesus' presence, but I know I can't force anyone to believe. My family has been on their own journey of transformation alongside me. Lily, my middle child, has become more open to spiritual discussions. We often sit together in the evenings, talking about faith and what it means to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Even Ahmed, who was initially skeptical, has started joining us for family prayers. It's a small step, but one that fills me with hope. Balancing this new purpose with my daily life isn't always easy. There are moments when I feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I've experienced and the responsibility that comes with it. How do you go about your normal routine when you've glimpsed eternity? It's a question I grapple with every day. Yet, despite the challenges, I've come to embrace my role as a messenger of hope and truth. I've learned that it's not about convincing everyone I meet or dramatically changing the world overnight. It's about living out the love and grace I encountered, showing others through my actions and words that there's more to life than what we can see and touch. Every day, I'm reminded of the eternity that awaits us all. It's both a comfort and a call to action. As I navigate this life between two worlds, I hold on to the truth of what I've seen and experienced, and I hope that through my story, others might catch a glimpse of the incredible love and purpose that awaits us all. As I wrap up my story, I want to leave you with a message from the heart. What I experienced was real, and it changed me forever. The love I felt in Jesus' presence was beyond anything I could have imagined. It wasn't about rules or rituals, it was about a deep, personal connection with God. I encourage you to open your heart to this possibility. You don't have to have a near-death experience to know God's love. It's available to all of us, right here and now. Take a moment to reflect on your own spiritual journey. Where are you heading? What do you believe about eternity? Remember, our choices here have consequences that echo into forever. Don't wait to seek the truth. Your eternal destiny is too important to leave to chance. I hope my story has sparked something in you, a curiosity, a longing, or maybe even a recognition of something you've always known deep down. Whatever it is, I urge you to explore it further. Your journey to truth and love might just be beginning.